Hello, this is Highly Distinct, and welcome to our presentation on use of social media in recruitment and selection. Social media has become more and more of a staple in our modern world. With the rapidly growing extension of these services into newer and more lucrative areas, a question remains unasked. Can social media be used as a tool for recruitment and selection, particularly in the context of the IT graduates which we as a company are seeking? Overall, we found that social media can be effective in recruitment if it's targeted, active, and well-resourced. On the other hand, we found that social media selection is not so effective due to its unreliability, invalidity, illegality, and immorality. We proceeded to outline a way in which other recruitment methods could fill the gaps. So can social media be used to recruit people? Let's go through some pros and cons. On one hand, social media recruiting offers a far broader pool to recruit from. Unlike traditional advertisement, social media undertakes cost-effective exposure to multi-regional, multilingual, and multicultural candidate pools. This is useful because a larger and more diverse supply of candidates guarantees that we can select higher quality candidates with new and fresh ideas. While this method does single out those without computers and internet, this selection is not necessarily a bad thing, as computer skills are essential for the role. Much like traditional marketing, however, poorly managed social media recruitment is a blunt instrument, wasting HR time as unsuitable candidates apply. For this reason, a targeted recruitment strategy must be developed. Vetting procedures, such as LinkedIn's Recruitment Solutions package, can be used to recoup this efficiency and have been employed to great effect. Similarly, advancements in applicant ranking algorithms are opening possibilities for large-scale recruitment with minimal costs attached. Indeed, an algorithm targeted specifically towards reviewing candidates for an IT role has recently given viable results with a fairly high degree of predictive validity. Further, social media may be used to enhance the depth of candidate-organization interaction prior to selection. When well organized and maintained, contact may translate into a foundation for the constructivist selection of candidates. This model allows mutual understanding and employer brand to attach the most sought-after employees and reduce turnover rates. So what actually makes a social media recruitment strategy effective? In their 2013 experiment, Carolat, Dastus, and Gregoire gave students access to a Facebook group ostensibly run by corporate sponsors of an event and proceeded to contact them in numerous ways. Although limited by their small sample size and within subject's design, the authors were able to show with a high level of significance that active interaction methods and brand, rather than event-based communication, were key drivers to promoting favorable attitudes towards brands and more rich social interactions between candidates and employment. Interestingly, a similar model seems to be adopted organically, with employers such as Deloitte stating that content and contact is key. This active engagement model can be used to formulate a positive employer brand. It should also be said that recruitment via social media is an extremely cost-effective tactic. Websites like Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter charge very little to establish a presence on, in comparison to traditional marketing. In a 2013 study, 56% of employees who use social media cited its relative affordability as their main factor for doing so. It is important to note, though, that some costs of social media recruitment are hidden. The time commitments inherent in maintaining an attractive and regular multi-platform online presence are heavy on HR departments. Additionally, while basic organizational interaction is relatively easy to create, it is relatively hard to do well. Carolat, Dastus, and Gregoire noted that active engagement must provide good entertainment value while being significantly cognitively demanding to provide for message encoding. This double constraint is hard to satisfy. Overall, the literature on formulating an effective online presence is still in its early stages, a situation which Jepson, Knox-Haley, and Townsend note is partly due to the rapid changes in the online environment. Thus, while attracting attention via social media is not particularly expensive, attracting and retaining attention from the right candidates requires more substantial resources. So what we've seen is that we can really maximize the advantages of social media in recruitment and minimize its disadvantages if we, firstly, use targeted recruitment to make the most of a bigger talent pool. Secondly, interact actively, thoughtfully, and often with candidates, leading to greater employer brand awareness. And thirdly, allocate enough HR resources to the project such that it can develop into a real money saver in the long term.
But what about selection? We believe that social media makes a far worse tool for selection than it did for recruitment. Doherty disagrees with us. arguing that social media is likely to be more accurate and standardized than a traditional CV. But his claims only relate to data application sites such as LinkedIn, which maintain a standard form arrangement. On more popular social media arenas such as Facebook, standard form goes out the window in favor of personalizability, and people often feel no great need to update profiles with any pertinent information at all. One must consider how this influx of irrelevant stimuli would affect the construct validity and inter-rater reliability of selection tests. So even given the ideal scenario of structured rating systems staffed by trained raters, the potential remains for halo effects and similar to me rater biases to form, as raters have no choice but to be exposed to details of the candidate's life. Even if we were to take Doherty's comments at face value, they have no empirical backing, as he works for a firm specializing in e-recruitment. He has an inherently biased position. So social media selection start to be less attractive. Considerations of illegality are also a major concern. Most jurisdictions have statutory protections preventing information such as age, gender, and race from being employee selection. These protections become a problem because, unlike with a traditional CV, social media makes it impossible not to view these features. Employees can't help but know, and this may influence their decisions. Clark and Roberts found that while 43% of employers they surveyed had used social media to get information about candidates, only 21% were trained to do so, and only 5% operated on substantive policies. This means big potential liabilities for employers if they stuff up. Further, many employers see unsolicited employer viewing of their profiles as a violation of their right to privacy. This ethical breach has been seen to translate to damage to the face validity of selection processes, negatively affecting attitudes towards a brand. Madeira found an extremely robust relationship between participant knowledge that a company used social media as a method of recruitment and lower scores perceived fairness of selection process and intentions of job pursuit with these companies. So maybe social media is not such a good tool for selection because it's first unreliable and invalid, secondly often illegal, thirdly unethical, unsound in a way they may damage an employment brand.
So how can we fill in the gaps left by social media in selection? Work sample tests, if constructed correctly, are amongst the most valid methods of employee selection. We proposed a report-based test in which applicants view a past problem faced by a client in the CWS team and individually formulate a set of recommendations towards IT-related solutions. These reports would then be rated for quality against the actual response given by the previous team, by the team alumni. This approach maximizes face validity, giving participants a feel of what the work is actually like and creating a sense that the testing is clearly job-related. Heavily cited meta-analyses of work sample tests such as this place the observed criterion-related validity of these tests at R equals 0.54. Even the critical modern analyses of work samples identify predictive value at the relatively high R equals 0.33. Additionally, this reduction is partly due to the inclusion of job knowledge questionnaires, which are not technically part of a work sample test per se. As our test is also a measure of job knowledge, as participants must know the solutions in order to recommend the right ones, this criticism is largely irrelevant. Thus, a work sample test in this form is empirically valid. Usefully, we would also be able to cross-modally assess the data collected above to observe each candidate's language comprehension skills, as it would be representative of their writing abilities and style. Experts would then be able to rate the participants for the clarity and comprehensibility of their written expression. This type of measure would be all the more predictably valid, as participants would not know that this was an element of their testing and alter their writing styles accordingly. This mixed approach to assessment is not unheard of. The work of Klinger and Schuler demonstrates usage of psychometric testing embedded in work sample tests. Interestingly, this approach minimizes losses to face validity due to candidates' general dislike of psychometric testing, yet yielded high correlation to two existing intelligent assessment methods. Thus, a carefully structured cross-functional work sample test provides an efficacious and cost-effective method of screening candidates. A second empirically validated method of employee selection, fit for our purposes, is the use of an interview. Research has shown comprehensively that structured interviews have an extremely high rate of predictive validity at 0.51. This method can be further enhanced by altering the way in which these structured interviews are put together. Campion and Palmer's 1997 meta-analysis of the relative value of popular methods of interview structure points to the use of same questions and anchored rating scales as imperative yet inexpensive ways of enhancing criterion-related validity. Similarly, the evidence shows that experience-based questions regarding real-life situations provide far more valid results than situational or hypothetical questions. This complicates our situation, however, as graduates are unlikely to have encountered work-related scenarios for which to draw answers. This problem can be overcome due to the nature of what we are testing. Team skills and communication skills are often tested in a university setting, thus providing fodder for targeted questioning. Overall then, a structured interview is an effective method of applicant screening. In conclusion, therefore, we've found that social media is effective for recruitment as so long as it's targeted, active, and well-resourced. We found that social media is not so effective for selection, as it's unreliable, invalid, illegal, and immoral. We then proceeded to outline two tests which could be used to fill this gap in selection, namely the use of a work sample test and a structured interview. Thank you for your time.